The galaxy had many legends, but none struck as much fear as Zira. She was an assassin, unmatched in skill, efficiency, and ruthlessness. Wherever she went, worlds whispered her name in fear. Merchants hid their most valuable goods. Soldiers trembled at the thought of facing her. Entire star systems avoided conflicts in which she might appear. She did not need to announce herself. Her reputation did that for her. Zira moved through the endless corridors of her sleek ship, the Silent Fang, her dark eyes scanning the data screens. Each assignment she completed added another name to her long list of victims, each more dangerous than the last. She never failed. She never hesitated. Failure was not an option. Her latest mission brought her to the edge of known space. A small colony on the frontier had somehow attracted the attention of the Interstellar Syndicate, the powerful organization that ruled the shadows of the galaxy. They had ordered Zira to eliminate the colony entirely, claiming its leaders were dangerous radicals who threatened their plans. Zira did not question orders. She prepared her weapons, checked her armor, and loaded the stealth pods into her ship. The mission was simple: infiltrate, eliminate, and vanish without leaving a trace. In her world, simplicity was often deadly. As her ship approached the colony, Zira observed the settlement from orbit. Unlike the fortified cities she had destroyed in the past, this colony was small and fragile. Its buildings were low and rounded, and its inhabitants were mostly humans. Zira had encountered humans before. They were weaker than most species, fragile and slow, yet somehow resilient in ways other species were not. She could not explain why they survived when many stronger civilizations had fallen. Zira's focus shifted to the humans below. She noticed a young man moving carefully among the settlement's outskirts. He did not flee when her sensors detected him. Instead, he continued walking calmly, carrying a small bag of supplies. Zira's curiosity sparked. He was unarmed. That alone surprised her. No one approached her without a weapon unless they were foolish or brave. Zira decided to descend quietly. She activated the stealth module of her ship, slipping through the atmosphere without a sound. Within minutes, she was hidden in the shadows, observing the colony from a safe distance. The young man, humans called him Eli, was gathering water from a small river that ran through the settlement. He moved carefully, respecting the fragile environment around him. Zira expected fear in his eyes. She expected panic when he sensed her presence, but instead she saw something unexpected: calmness. A quiet confidence, and most strikingly, a gentle kindness. That small gesture, the way he tended to the water, careful not to disturb the creatures that lived there, caught her attention. Zira had never seen kindness as a choice. In her life, interactions were always calculated, whether for survival, profit, or power. Yet here was a human, unafraid and gentle, standing alone against a galaxy that had always been cruel. Zira's curiosity outweighed her caution. She stepped closer, moving silently across the rocks. Her dark form blended with the shadows as she approached Eli. "Who are you?" she asked quietly, her voice low but firm. Eli turned, his eyes meeting hers. There was no fear there, no attempt to flee. Instead, he smiled faintly as if he had expected her question. "I'm Eli," he said calmly. "You don't need to hide. I won't harm you." Zira blinked, slightly taken aback. Most beings, even humans, would have screamed or run. Her instincts told her to attack, to test him. But something held her back. Something in the way he carried himself, in the calm of his presence, made her hesitate. "You are alone," he continued, "and I see what you carry. You have no need to be here to harm us. You could leave now and we would not follow you." Zira studied him. Was he naive, foolish? Or was this some kind of trap? She had been deceived before, many times. Yet there was a truth in his voice she could not ignore. Before she could respond, a warning alert flashed on her wrist device. Syndicate agents had detected her presence and were closing in fast. They had likely suspected that she might fail her mission, or worse, betray them. She looked at Eli, then back at the approaching threat. Time was short. She could leave, vanish into space, and continue her mission elsewhere. But something in her made her pause. For the first time in her life, she hesitated. Eli noticed the alert. Without fear, he stepped closer, holding out his hand. "I can help," he said simply. "You don't have to face them alone." Zira narrowed her eyes. Help from a human? Ridiculous, yet the offer stirred something deep inside her. A strange curiosity, a spark she could not name. Before she could decide, the syndicate agents appeared on the outskirts of the settlement. Sleek ships hovered above, weapons primed, scanning for movement. A small strike team disembarked, landing near the river where Zira and Eli stood. Zira's training kicked in. She moved like a shadow, striking silently, disabling the first wave of enemies before they could react. But there were too many. She was strong, fast, precise, but not invincible. The syndicate had sent their best hunters trained specifically to eliminate her if she failed. Eli did not panic. He ran to the supply building and returned with crates of tools and small devices. He tossed one toward Zira. "Use this," he said. She caught it midair, analyzing it instantly. It was a simple human invention, improvised but clever. With Eli's assistance, Zira managed to turn the tide. The humans' small devices disrupted the syndicate's communications, slowed their weapons, and gave her the advantage she needed to retreat safely. Within moments, she and Eli vanished into the nearby forest, leaving the syndicate hunters confused and frustrated. As they hid among the trees, Zira finally allowed herself to speak. "Why help me?" she asked. "You barely know me. You could have run." Eli smiled softly. "Because you needed it. Everyone deserves help sometimes, even the feared, even assassins." Zira's mind struggled with the idea. Help, kindness. She had never experienced either in such a raw, deliberate way. Her life had been a series of calculations, missions, and survival. She had learned to trust no one. And yet here was a human, offering her something she could not name: choice. The forest around them was quiet. Birds chirped in the distance, and small creatures peeked from the undergrowth. Zira watched Eli, noting his calm demeanor, his careful movements, and the unshakable sense of trust he offered. For the first time, she felt seen, not feared, not hunted, just seen. "Stay close," she said finally, her voice softer than she expected. "We move at dawn. The syndicate won't give up easily." Eli nodded. "I will stay. We can face it together." Zira's eyes softened slightly. She had never asked for companionship, never needed it. And yet, as she followed Eli through the forest, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a different way to live. Not through fear. Not through death. But through something else. The first hints of sunrise lit the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Zira looked up at it, a feeling she could not name rising inside her. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the beginning of something she had never imagined possible. For the first time in her life, Zira did not feel like the galaxy's most feared assassin. She felt uncertain, and in that uncertainty she felt alive. The galaxy had always known her as a shadow, a ghost, a force of fear. But here, in the quiet of a small human settlement, she glimpsed another path. One that might lead to redemption, connection, and perhaps something even more dangerous than her past, the possibility of trust. And as she walked beside Eli, Zira realized that the galaxy would never see her the same way again. The forest was quiet, but Zira's senses remained sharp. Every sound, every shadow was measured and analyzed. The syndicate would not give up easily. They had sent the best hunters in the galaxy to eliminate her if she failed her mission, and now she knew that failure was not an option. Yet, for the first time, she did not feel alone. Eli moved beside her with careful steps, scanning the path ahead. He was not fast or strong in the way Zira was, but he carried a confidence that surprised her. He had faced danger without fear, without hesitation, and without weapons. It was unusual. Humans were supposed to panic. Humans were supposed to run, and yet this one stood calmly beside her, offering help rather than running away. As the sun rose, painting the forest in soft gold light, Zira allowed herself a rare thought. Perhaps humans were more resilient than she had believed. Eli broke the silence. "You're very skilled," he said softly. "I've never seen anyone move like that before." Zira's eyes narrowed. Compliments were dangerous. They could be a trap. But there was no mockery in his voice, no malice. "Just observation. I have to be," she replied simply. "If I make mistakes, I die. Others die. That is the way I survive." Eli nodded as if he understood more than he should. "Even so, it does not make you any less human," he said. The word human caused a flicker of confusion in Zira's mind. She was not human, and she had never been one. Her species was stronger, faster, and more precise, but what Eli meant was clear. There was a part of her beneath the fear and skill that could be reached. That could be touched by something simple, something kind. They walked in silence for several hours. Zyra led the way, moving through the forest with effortless precision. She noticed Eli's careful observation of their surroundings, how he scanned for danger, how he studied the ground for signs of the Syndicate's hunters. He was learning, adapting. Even without combat training, humans had the ability to observe, to analyze, to survive in small ways that others often overlooked. As they approached a clearing, Eli paused. "We need to find shelter," he said. "The Syndicate will not stop searching and nightfall is coming. We need a place to rest and plan." Zyra nodded. She could have found a hidden cave or a high vantage point, but she allowed Eli to take the lead. There was something in his approach, gentle, careful, thoughtful, that intrigued her. Perhaps it was time to trust someone, even briefly. They found a small cave hidden behind a wall of dense foliage. It was dry, warm, and secure from prying eyes. Zyra checked the perimeter with swift, silent movements, ensuring no danger lingered nearby. Once satisfied, she relaxed slightly and finally allowed herself to speak. "You survived," she said, studying Eli. "I expected humans to panic." Eli smiled faintly. "Some do," he admitted. "Some don't. I choose not to." Zyra considered this. Choice. Humans had a strange ability to choose, even in dangerous situations. Even when everything was stacked against them, they could decide to act differently. This was alien to her. Her life had always been ruled by necessity, by duty, by survival. She had no choice. Her skills, her life, her reputation, it had all been dictated by the Syndicate. Eli seemed to sense her thoughts. "You don't always have to follow orders," he said quietly. "Even the strongest can choose differently." Zyra frowned. That was dangerous advice. Too dangerous, yet it lingered in her mind. They settled into the cave and Eli began organizing a small fire. The flames illuminated their faces, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Zyra observed silently, noting how humans could create comfort in even the most difficult situations. A fire was simple, but it brought warmth, safety, and a sense of calm. She realized she had never experienced such a simple luxury. Her life had been one of shadows, cold steel, and silent death. "You should eat," Eli said, offering her a small portion of food he had carried in his bag. "You need strength if you want to survive." Zyra took the food reluctantly. She was not used to others offering help. Survival had always been a solitary endeavor, yet the warmth of the fire and the calm presence of Eli made her hesitate before rejecting it. She ate quietly, as if the act itself was a small rebellion against her usual life. Hours passed. The sun sank below the horizon and the forest grew dark. Zyra sat beside the fire, her mind racing with thoughts she had never entertained before. She was no longer a shadow in the galaxy. She was something else, a being capable of connection even if fleeting. Eli broke the silence again. "I know who you are," he said softly. "Zyra, the Syndicate's assassin. I've heard the stories. I was afraid at first, but I decided to trust you anyway." Zyra stared at him, words failing her. Fear, suspicion, gratitude, confusion, all mixed into one. No one had ever trusted her. No one had offered her kindness without expectation or manipulation. And here was a human giving her exactly that. "You are different," Eli continued. "You don't have to be the monster they say you are. You can be more." Zyra's mind recoiled. More? What did he mean by that? She had been the galaxy's most feared assassin, a shadow that moved silently across stars, taking life with precision. Was he suggesting she could be something else? Eli nodded, reading her thoughts. "Yes, you can choose differently. You can protect instead of destroy. You can help instead of harm." Zyra laughed quietly, a sound that surprised her. It was not cruel, not sharp, not threatening. It was soft, almost curious. "You are naive," she said, though she did not sound convinced herself. The Syndicate would never allow that. They would see it as betrayal. Eli's eyes were steady. "Maybe," he admitted. "But not everyone follows the Syndicate. Not everyone is bound by fear." Zyra studied him. For the first time she felt hope, a fragile, unfamiliar hope that perhaps there was another way to live, one that did not involve shadows and death. The night passed quietly. Zyra kept watch, her instincts never fully at rest, but she allowed herself to relax more than usual. She watched Eli sleep, noting the peace he carried even in danger. There was something remarkable in that, something she could not name. By dawn, the forest was alive with light and movement. Birds sang in the trees, small animals scurried along the undergrowth, and the river sparkled in the early sun. Zira felt a strange sense of calm. Perhaps it was Eli's influence. Perhaps it was the simplicity of life outside the Syndicate's control. Whatever it was powerful. Eli stirred and stretched, his movements slow but deliberate. "We should plan our next steps," he said. "The Syndicate will not give up. They will keep hunting you, Zira. We need to stay ahead." Zira nodded. "Agreed, but we will do it my way," she said. "No unnecessary risks, precision, strategy, efficiency, that is how we survive." Eli smiled. "And a little kindness," he added quietly. Zira glanced at him, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, faint smile. "Perhaps," she said softly. Together they left the cave, moving cautiously through the forest. Zira's skills were unmatched, but now she had something new. A companion, a human who trusted her, and a spark of something she had never known: connection. As they traveled toward the colony's edge, Zira considered her life. Every mission, every kill, every shadowed corridor she had walked through, the galaxy had feared her, and she had embraced that fear as her shield. But Eli's presence reminded her that strength was not only in fear or skill. Strength could come from trust, from compassion, and from the simple act of offering help. And somewhere deep inside, Zira wondered if she could truly change. Could the galaxy's most feared assassin find another path? One that did not rely on death and terror? One that embraced life even in its smallest, simplest forms? The answer was not clear. But for the first time, Zira allowed herself to hope. She would continue to watch, to protect, to fight when necessary. But she would also learn what humans could teach her about courage, kindness, and choice. Perhaps the galaxy had more to fear from the Syndicate than from her now. Perhaps the greatest power was not in killing, but in protecting. And Eli, quiet, unarmed, and unwavering, was the key to that new understanding. The forest seemed brighter as they moved forward. The shadows that had defined Zira's life were still present, but now they felt smaller, less oppressive. There was a future beyond fear, and Zira, once the galaxy's most feared assassin, was beginning to see it. For the first time, she was not alone. And for the first time, she realized that perhaps that alone could change everything. Zira and Eli moved cautiously through the forest, keeping to the shadows as they approached the outskirts of the colony. The air was still, but Zira's instincts told her danger was near. The Syndicate did not forgive hesitation, and they would not stop hunting her. Every step they took was measured, silent, and deliberate. Eli walked beside her, carrying a small satchel filled with supplies. He had proven himself resourceful in the previous encounter, using clever human devices to help Zira escape the Syndicate's strike team. Now he was quiet, focused, and fully aware that failure was not an option. "We need to understand the Syndicate's plan," Zira said, her voice low. "They wouldn't send so many hunters without reason. There is more at stake than my life or this colony." Eli nodded. "I've been observing them," he said. "They aren't just after you. They want something from this colony, something valuable. I think it's a weapon, or at least something they can use to control others." Zira's eyes narrowed. The Syndicate rarely acted for simple profit. They sought power, control, influence. If the humans in this colony were targeted, it meant they had something significant, something dangerous. Zira had spent her life eliminating threats, but now the threat was not just to her, it was to innocence. They moved carefully to a small hill overlooking the colony. From this vantage point, they could see the settlement clearly. Smoke rose from chimneys and humans moved about, unaware of the danger descending upon them. Zira's sharp eyes noted patterns: guards, patrols, schedules. She calculated possible entry points, escape routes, and weak spots in the Syndicate's approach. Eli pointed to a large warehouse at the edge of the colony. "That building," he said. "The Syndicate is interested in it. Whatever they want is probably inside," Zira nodded. "We will need a plan. Direct confrontation is too risky. The Syndicate has superior firepower, but we can use their strength against them. Their overconfidence is their weakness. They spent the next several hours observing. Zira was impressed by Eli's patience and attention to detail. He noticed things she had not, the way guards moved in pairs, the timing of their shifts, and small structural weaknesses in the buildings. Humans were fragile, yes, but they had ingenuity that could rival more powerful species when used wisely. As night fell, the forest around them grew darker. The colony's lights glimmered below, and the distant hum of the syndicate ships became audible. Zira's instincts sharpened. They were closing in. "We act tonight," she said finally. "We infiltrate the warehouse, discover what they want, and leave before they realize we are there." "Stealth and speed are key," Eli nodded. "And if we encounter them," Zira's eyes gleamed, "then we fight. But not recklessly. Every strike must count. Precision first, strength second." They moved under the cover of darkness, using the trees and terrain to remain unseen. Zira's stealth training was unmatched, and Eli's careful movements complemented hers perfectly. Together they were a silent force gliding through the forest without making a sound. Reaching the edge of the colony, they paused. The warehouse loomed ahead, guarded by several syndicate operatives. Zira studied the guards, timing their movements. She whispered to Eli, "When I give the signal, create a distraction. Nothing lethal, but enough to pull their attention." Eli nodded and activated a small device from his satchel. A light flickered in the opposite direction, catching the guards' attention. They turned toward the movement, leaving the path to the warehouse momentarily unguarded. Zira moved swiftly, slipping past the distracted guards and entering the warehouse. Eli followed closely, staying just behind her. Inside, the warehouse was dark and vast, filled with crates, machinery, and strange containers. Zira's eyes scanned for threats, noting unusual markings and devices. At the center of the warehouse, she found what the syndicate sought: a small, pulsating device, clearly not of human design. It emitted a faint hum and glowed with a soft blue light. Zira recognized it immediately. It was a prototype energy core, capable of powering weapons of immense scale. In the wrong hands, it could destroy entire colonies or control entire fleets. Eli's eyes widened. "That's what they want?" he whispered. "They could destroy everything with that," Zira nodded. "Yes, and we can't let them have it." She moved closer to inspect it, careful to avoid the security measures surrounding the core. Her fingers traced the edges, analyzing its design. Despite its small size, its potential for destruction was enormous. Suddenly, a warning alarm sounded. The syndicate had discovered their presence. Zira's heart rate accelerated, but she remained calm. This was expected. They had planned for surprises, but she had trained for moments like this her entire life. "Eli," she said sharply, "we take the core and move. Now." Eli picked up the device carefully, cradling it as if it were fragile. Zira led the way out, using hidden exits she had noted earlier. But as they reached the forest, syndicate hunters appeared, blocking their path. Zira's instincts kicked in. She moved like a shadow, striking quickly, disabling the first attackers without killing them. Eli followed, using small gadgets to disrupt weapons and create openings. Together they were an unstoppable combination, her deadly skill paired with his human ingenuity. The hunters regrouped, firing energy blasts that cut through the trees. Zira and Eli ducked and weaved, moving deeper into the forest. Zira realized they could not fight their way out completely. They needed another plan, something clever, something human. Eli pulled out a device from his satchel, a small cube with strange markings. "This should help," he said. Zira raised an eyebrow. He pressed a button, and the cube projected a bright, shimmering hologram of the forest. The syndicate hunters paused, confused by the illusion, unsure which path was real. Zira smiled faintly. "Clever," she said. "Humans have surprising ways to fight without brute force." Using the distraction, they slipped past the hunters and deeper into the forest. Zira's mind raced with calculations, assessing their route, predicting syndicate movements and planning their next move. Eli followed closely, calm and focused, proving that courage was not about strength alone. It was about cleverness, patience, and determination. After several tense hours, they reached a small cave, hidden by dense foliage. Zira secured the perimeter, ensuring they were not followed. Eli placed the energy core on a flat surface, inspecting it carefully. "We need to protect this," he said. "If the syndicate recovers it, they could destroy the colony or worse." Zira nodded. We will, but we also need to understand it. Its design is unfamiliar, but I can analyze it. We may be able to use it as leverage against the Syndicate if necessary. Eli studied her. You're thinking about using it to fight them? Zira's eyes hardened. Not fight them recklessly, strategically. The Syndicate underestimates humans, and now they will learn their mistake. Eli smiled faintly. I never thought I would work with the galaxy's most feared assassin, but I trust you. Zira considered his words carefully. Trust. It was not a word she used often. Her life had been built on fear and skill, not alliances or friendships, and yet here was a human, small, fragile, and entirely capable, placing trust in her without hesitation. It wasn't powerful. The night passed quietly, filled with analysis and planning. Zira examined the energy core, tracing its components and understanding its potential. Eli suggested ways to hide it and protect the colony, using human ingenuity and resourcefulness to complement Zira's lethal skill. By dawn, they had a plan. They would move the energy core to a secure location within the colony, prepare defenses, and be ready to face the Syndicate if they returned. But they would not rely on brute force alone. They would use cleverness, strategy, and courage, qualities Zira had never seen in action like this before. As the first light of day touched the forest, Zira looked at Eli. You are not like other humans, she said. You are remarkable. Eli shrugged modestly. I'm just doing what I can. That is all any of us can do. Zira studied him, noting his calm determination, his clever mind, and his unwavering kindness. She realized something profound. Humans were small, fragile, and unassuming, but they were capable of extraordinary courage and ingenuity when given a reason to act. The Syndicate would return. That was certain. But Zira no longer faced the threat alone. She had a companion, a human who offered trust and kindness instead of fear. Together they could face challenges that even Zira had never imagined overcoming alone. For the first time, she considered a future beyond death and shadows. A future where skill was not only for killing, but for protecting, guiding, and inspiring others. The galaxy was dangerous, cruel, and filled with fear, but perhaps with humans like Eli, it could also be changed. And Zira, once the galaxy's most feared assassin, was ready to see how far that change could go. The morning sun filtered through the dense trees of the forest, casting long shadows across the ground. Zira and Eli moved carefully toward the colony, the stolen energy core safely secured in a specially crafted container. Every step was calculated, every sound measured. The Syndicate would not give up easily, and Zira knew that they would return with more hunters, more ships, and more firepower than before. But Zira was no longer alone. Eli walked beside her with quiet confidence, carrying supplies and devices that were small but ingenious. Humans, Zira realized, were clever in ways that others often underestimated. They had creativity, persistence, and courage, even in the face of overwhelming danger. As they approached the colony, Zira's sharp eyes scanned the perimeter. Syndicate forces had not yet arrived, but the air felt tense, like a storm about to break. She signaled Eli to take cover, and they climbed to a vantage point overlooking the settlement. Eli, she said, her voice low, we must prepare the humans. They need to understand how to defend themselves. Not to fight the Syndicate directly, they are too strong, but to protect their homes, their families, and this energy core. Eli nodded. I can help. I've been training some of the workers in observation, camouflage, and simple traps. They may be small, but they can be smart. And cleverness can defeat strength. Zira studied him with a faint smile. Cleverness. Yes. Humans had a way of seeing possibilities that others missed. Perhaps this was why they survived where others had failed. They descended into the colony, moving silently through the narrow streets. Workers and farmers paused when they saw Zira, her reputation preceding her even here. Most trembled, but Eli encouraged them to stay calm. She's with us, he said quietly. She's here to protect, not destroy. Zira noticed the subtle changes in the humans' behavior. Fear was still present, but it was mixed with determination. They were learning to trust her, to believe that they could make a difference. That small shift was powerful. They reached the warehouse where the energy core had been stored. Zira quickly set up a defensive plan. Using the surrounding terrain, she created hidden observation points, escape routes, and clever traps. Eli worked alongside her, using small human devices to enhance the defenses. Together they were a combination of skill and ingenuity that made the colony stronger than it had ever been. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. Zyra could feel it, the approach of the Syndicate. Their ships appeared on the horizon, glinting in the dying light. The hunters moved swiftly, confident in their power, expecting easy prey. They had underestimated humans before, but this time Zyra and Eli were ready. "Positions," Zyra ordered, her voice calm but commanding. Humans moved to their assigned locations, hiding, observing, and preparing to act. Zyra herself took a vantage point near the edge of the forest, her weapons ready, her senses alert. The Syndicate forces landed with precision. Their soldiers moved in formation, scanning the colony for threats. They were disciplined, trained, and deadly, but they did not account for the humans' creativity or Zyra's experience. The first shots were fired not by Zyra, but by clever traps set by Eli and the colonists. Nets, smoke screens, and small devices created confusion among the Syndicate hunters. They fired blindly, giving the humans time to move, hide, and strike where the enemy was weakest. Zyra moved like a shadow through the chaos. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. She did not kill recklessly. Her aim was to disable, to protect, and to teach the humans how to survive. Each human she guided acted with courage, their confidence growing with every small success. Eli stayed close to her, coordinating movements and improvising new tactics. "Use the shadows," he shouted. "They are slow to react." Zyra observed how humans adapted in real time. Weak on their own, yes, but clever, coordinated, and courageous, they became a force the Syndicate had not anticipated. Zyra realized that their ingenuity, combined with her skills, made them a formidable team. Hours passed, the battle stretching into night. Zyra noticed that the Syndicate hunters were growing frustrated. They had expected to crush the colony in minutes. Instead, they were being outmaneuvered by humans they had considered weak and insignificant. At one point, Zyra faced the Syndicate's top enforcer, a lethal warrior known across multiple star systems. He charged at her with confidence, assuming she would be alone and vulnerable. But Zyra was not alone. Using the human's clever traps and her own skill, she lured him into a narrow canyon, cutting off his retreat. The enforcer attacked with blinding speed, but Zyra was faster. Every movement was calculated, precise, and controlled. She disabled him without killing, using his own momentum against him. He fell to the ground, stunned, humiliated, and defeated by a combination of skill and cleverness. The humans watched in awe. They had seen death and destruction before, but now they saw protection, strategy, and courage in action. They began to understand that even the smallest and weakest could make a difference. Even the most feared assassin could fight for life rather than death. When the dust settled, the Syndicate forces retreated. Their pride was wounded, their confidence shaken. Zyra and Eli had protected the colony, not through raw power alone, but through strategy, preparation, and human ingenuity. The humans cheered quietly, careful not to draw the Syndicate's attention, but the joy was palpable. Zyra observed them, noting the growth in their confidence and courage. Eli approached her, smiling faintly. "You see," he said softly, "even the smallest can change the outcome if they work together. Even humans can be extraordinary." Zyra's eyes softened. "I see," she admitted. "I underestimated them." "I underestimated you," Eli shook his head. "You didn't underestimate me. You didn't expect humans to be capable of courage, of cleverness. But now you see, and so do they." Zyra looked at the colonists, noticing how their fear had transformed into determination. These humans were small, fragile, and unassuming, yet they had faced the Syndicate and survived. They had learned to trust her, to trust themselves, and in that trust they had found power. For Zyra, the lesson was even deeper. She had spent her life relying on fear, intimidation, and skill to survive. But now she understood another path, one of protection, of guidance, and of trust. She could still be lethal when necessary, but she could also be a force for life rather than death. Night fell completely, and the colony was quiet once more. The Syndicate had retreated, and the humans had learned their first lesson in courage. Zyra and Eli moved among them, offering guidance, reassurance, and instruction. "You were amazing," one of the colonists said quietly to Zyra. "I never thought we could survive them. But you You taught us to fight in ways we never knew. Zira nodded, her expression calm but thoughtful. You did not need me to survive, she said. You needed yourself. I only helped guide you. Courage, cleverness, and determination were always within you. I only helped you see it. Eli smiled at her. And you see it too, he said softly. Strength is not just in killing. It is in protecting, guiding, and inspiring others. That is what makes someone truly powerful. Zira considered his words. The galaxy had known her as a shadow, a weapon, a force of fear. But now she saw that power could take many forms. Fear was easy. Protection, trust, and courage were far more difficult and far more rewarding. The night passed quietly. Zira kept watch, but her mind was no longer consumed with fear or survival alone. She thought of the humans, of their courage, and of the possibility that perhaps, for the first time, she could be more than a weapon. By dawn, Zira and Eli had ensured the colony was secure. The humans were tired, but their spirits were high. They had learned to defend themselves, to act cleverly, and to trust in their own abilities. Zira watched them, quietly proud. For the first time, she considered a life beyond fear, beyond death, beyond shadows. She had been the galaxy's most feared assassin, but now she had found another way, a path of protection, courage, and trust. And for the first time, she was not alone in walking it. The Syndicate would return. That was certain. But Zira no longer feared them, not in the same way. She had allies, human ingenuity, and a new understanding of true strength. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could change not only her own life, but the fate of the galaxy. As she stood beside Eli, watching the colony awaken to a new day, Zira realized that the shadows of her past were still there, but they no longer controlled her. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was filled with possibilities she had never imagined, and in that uncertainty she found hope. The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sky, like glittering shards of glass scattered across black velvet. Lyra Vance moved silently through the narrow alleyways of the spaceport, her long coat brushing against the metal walls. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from awareness. Every step she took could be observed, every sound could give her away. Lyra had learned long ago that caution was life, and trust was almost always a dangerous luxury. Her ship, a sleek silver dart named the Whisper, was hidden in a shadowed docking bay. She had changed her ship's identification codes, rotated her trajectory through 3 star systems, and even disguised her appearance in a dozen ways. Yet she knew that across the galaxy, bounty hunters, mercenaries, and corrupt planetary authorities were still tracking her. Her reputation followed her like a shadow, one she could never escape. Every world hunts me, she whispered to herself, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her eyes. And yet, I must keep moving. Lyra had spent years learning how to survive. She was clever, resourceful, and relentless. No one had ever caught her, not permanently. But today she sensed something different. Her instincts told her she was nearing a planet unlike any she had visited before. She adjusted her small cloaking device and approached the surface, eyes scanning for landing points. The planet, Haven 7, seemed peaceful from orbit. Lush forests stretched across the continents, and small clusters of cities glimmered like jewels in the distance. Scanners showed no sign of military ships patrolling the skies. Yet the feeling in her chest whispered caution. There was something unusual about this world. Lyra guided the Whisper through the clouds, careful to avoid detection. The landing was smooth, the ship settling into a small clearing near the edge of a forest. She stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, and inhaled the crisp, clean air. For a moment, she allowed herself a small sense of relief. The planet seemed quiet, safe, yet she knew better. Peace was often a mask, and appearances could be deadly. Moving cautiously, she approached a small settlement in the distance. The buildings were simple, modest, and well-maintained. Smoke curled from chimneys and lights flickered in windows. For a moment, Lyra considered staying in the forest, hiding among the trees, but something drew her forward. A single house, slightly apart from the others, had a light burning in the window. It felt inviting. Curiosity pulled her closer, though she told herself it was caution. Perhaps someone inside could offer supplies or information or even temporary safety. She crept up to the door and paused. Her hand hovered over the smooth metal handle. She expected caution, maybe even hostility. She expected alarms. But when she knocked, the door opened almost immediately. A man stood there, tall and solid, with short brown hair and calm, steady eyes. He looked at her for a long moment without fear, without suspicion. "Hello," he said simply. "You must be hungry." "Come in," Lyra froze. This was not what she expected. Every encounter she had ever had with strangers, especially humans, ended with hesitation, suspicion, or outright hostility. Yet here was a human who offered friendship without question. She glanced around, searching for a trap, a hidden weapon, a holographic warning system. There was nothing. Just the man, his home, and the warm glow of light. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped inside. The interior was simple but cozy. Wooden furniture, soft fabrics, and the faint aroma of cooking filled the air. Lyra noticed no advanced security systems, no walls lined with defensive turrets. The man, whose name she soon learned was Jonah, moved naturally, offering her a seat and a cup of steaming liquid. Lyra's instincts told her to leave. She had survived this long by trusting no one. Yet something about Jonah's calm presence made her hesitate. There was no fear in him, no flinching, no suspicion. His eyes met hers evenly, without judgment or caution. It was almost disarming. "You're far from home," Jonah said, pouring the drink carefully. "I've seen travelers like you. You carry a lot of weight on your shoulders." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't want to reveal her true identity. "Not here, not now. I'm just passing through," she said softly, taking the cup. Jonah nodded. "That's fair. Everyone passes through eventually. But it's nice to rest, even for a short while." She sipped the warm liquid, surprised at how comforting it felt. Humans were strange. They were soft yet resilient. Welcoming yet unafraid. Lyra had always thought fear was universal. Something all intelligent beings respected. But Jonah? He defied every expectation. The silence between them was calm but tense. Lyra's mind raced, cataloging everything. How many exits were in the room, how quickly she could reach them. Whether Jonah's hospitality might hide danger. But even as she calculated, she couldn't deny the strange sense of ease settling in her chest. The distant hum of engines reached her ears. She stiffened, glancing out the window. Small ships moved across the sky. Her pursuers had found her sooner than she expected. The galaxy never forgot, never forgave. Jonah noticed her shift. "You're being hunted, aren't you?" he asked casually, as if discussing the weather. Lyra froze. No one had ever spoken so directly, so calmly about her life. She studied him carefully. His tone was not accusatory nor fearful. It was matter of fact. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I am, and if they find me—" Her voice trailed off. "They won't," Jonah said, setting down the cup. "Not while I'm here." Lyra's brow furrowed. "You don't even know me." "And yet I trust you," he replied simply. "Sometimes trust is the only thing that can keep us alive." For the first time in years, Lyra considered that possibility. She had always relied on her wits, her speed, and her cunning. Trust was a weakness she could not afford. Yet something about this human, this unafraid, calm human, made her question everything she had believed. The night deepened. Lights from the settlement flickered through the trees, and distant calls of animals echoed in the forest. Lyra and Jonah sat together silent for a while. Then quietly she asked, "Why are you not afraid?" Jonah smiled, a small, confident smile. "Because fear doesn't solve problems. It only makes them bigger. Courage makes the impossible possible." Lyra studied his face, searching for deception, but found none. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. For the first time in years, she felt something strange, a flicker of hope. Perhaps not just for survival, but for something more. Her thoughts were interrupted by a distant roar, a mechanical growl from the sky. Her pursuers had located the planet and were closing in. Lyra's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, to vanish into the shadows. Jonah stood, moving to a small console in the corner of the room. Lights blinked as he activated it, revealing a network of sensors and simple defensive mechanisms scattered around the property. "They'll find us," he said calmly. "But they won't expect what comes next." Lyra's brow rose. "What do you mean?" Jonah gestured toward the network. "These humans, my people, they do not fight like others. We are unpredictable, clever, and fearless when we must be. They expect fear. We give them something else." Lyra's pulse quickened. She had never seen humans act like this, calm, prepared, and yet unconstrained by panic. Perhaps this was what made them different. Perhaps this was the truth she had been missing all her life. Humans were not just survivors. They were something more. As the first ships appeared on the horizon, Lyra felt a strange sense of anticipation. She did not feel fear. She felt curiosity, and perhaps for the first time in years a glimmer of trust. She stood beside Jonah, ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment she realized something profound. The human at the door had not just opened his home. He had opened a new possibility, one that she had never dared imagine. The sky above Haven 7 shimmered with approaching lights. Lyra's pursuers would arrive soon, but she did not shrink. She did not hide. She opened her mind to what humans could teach her, to the courage they could inspire, and as the first ships descended, she knew one thing clearly. This world, this human, was unlike anything she had ever encountered before. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra Vance did not run.